Yeah, so this is where we left off. You know, again, you can call people on the phone all the time. I was speaking to one of the brokerages last night. I'm trying to figure out, I want to max out my 401k by the end of the year. Again, if you can do that, you know, that money will come off the top of your income. So in terms of appearances, when you go to the IRS, it, you know, appears that you're making hopefully anywhere from like 18 to, even if you're over 50, you can go up to another 6,000, so you can go up to 24,000 that you can take off your income if you can afford it. That's the way to do it. In terms of other things, other investment alternatives, we touched on gold just a little bit, and again, you know, I don't know. I just haven't found that the hype is supported out there. All the people who claim that will work. I was going to do that. There's a Saturday Night Live thing about Glenn Beck and the Chinese that we were talking about at the end of class the other day. But this network is hopeless. It won't load that thing up. But it's pretty funny. There have been some people who have made a fair amount of money in gold a few years ago, but then they kind of give it all back. So again, unless you're jumping in and out, and this notion that gold reacts opposite of the market, providing a hedge. You know, a hedge is something that you want to, you know, that hopefully will not go down with the rest of the market. You'd be hedging your investments. Maybe a better hedge would be real estate. But again, real estate, in terms of going in the opposite direction of the market, that's not always the case either. But real estate does have a lot of advantages. In terms of, you know, especially when we're talking about stocks, and some of the better stocks are the ones that you can actually, you know, understand and, you know, touch, and they're tangible type products that you think would do well. Well, real estate is even more so that way. I mean, real estate, you actually have physical property. There's some, you know, intricacies with real estate. Obviously, you're paying taxes on it each year if you're letting it set, you know, vacant. I've got some raw land that's killing me in terms of homeowners association fees that accrue every year and taxes that accrue every year. So raw land is not always the best. Raw land also will, it's a bit more speculative, and you know, the interest rates when you go to get a loan for raw land, it's going to be somewhat higher. Usually, I mean, compared to owner-occupied real estate, raw land's probably going to be about double. You know, I had a 7% loan that I just closed out just recently, just because I just got tired of paying it. But it was more of a speculative investment that turned into a kind of a long-term hold. So, but it does give me some diversity. You know what I mean? In terms of, I feel better having some in real estate and some in stock type stuff. You know, equities, mutual funds type things. Disadvantages of real estate. Mainly, we're going to be talking about liquidity to a certain extent, and then also if it's owner or not owner, if it's you know, a residential income property that you're renting out. You know, you may end up going to fix toilets and heaters and dealing with tenants and stuff like that. I think some of that stuff's overblown. If I get an email a year from my tenants, that's a lot. But I've got a property manager, and it's fairly easy to do. So direct real estate investments, yeah. You know, number one, you know, your one of your primary investments in your portfolio should be the home you live in. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, and the tax advantages are there. The ability to deduct that interest, the ability to kind of live life as you want, not being a tenant. You do give up a little bit in terms of mobility. You know, there are some people who end up being kind of job locked. I know some people live in places like Ohio and places like that where the economy's kind of taking a hit, and property values drop, and there's no jobs, but they can't even move away because they're upside down on their mortgage. So bad things can happen. But a lot of times these volatile markets, you know, the reason why they went up and down is, well, I mean, they're volatile. You live someplace like Arizona, nobody complains when prices are going through the roof, but when they start to drop, they're shocked. Well, it's all part of the deal. And certain markets, historically, again, certain places in Florida, Arizona, Las Vegas, they have these real estate markets that are incredibly volatile. And so if you're going to get involved in that, especially in a big way, as an investment, you need to be careful. But anyway, most people, who get ahead in life, own their own home. And again, if it's a nothing too lavish and a normal size home, it's probably a pretty good rental property. The only problem with rental properties, at least in the States, is sometimes the neighborhoods kind of have a way of kind of aging out, and they, you get a decent neighborhood, and next thing you know, it kind of becomes a little bit rougher, and now there's a lot more renters living in there, and you just see neighborhoods kind of age out. So if you're careful when you're buying, maybe you can find something that's maybe will have a bit more enduring value. So I'm not a big fan of subdivisions. I don't want to live in one, and I don't really want to invest in one. But if there's something that's, still rentable, that happens to be on a lake, happens to be on a creek, happens to be on some sort of waterfront, happens to be next to a golf course, something like that, where those types of neighborhoods don't tend to, have that sort of drop as much. And for example, I've talked about that. I've got a house in Germany. Man, there it's awesome because they don't have urban sprawl. The housing is very controlled in terms of expansion, so neighborhoods tend to stay very uniform. Plus, they make the houses out of stone and concrete and the rest of it. I mean, they've got lots of wood around, but that's not what they build their homes out of. So it's ideal, but most people don't have the option for that. You have to kind of live over there to buy over there. So anyway. Other direct real estate, so we've talked about the income from taxes, the interest is deductible. Possible hedge against inflation. Yeah, I don't know that I would. I mean, there is a bit in terms of buying a home. The fact that your mortgage, if you're involved in a 30-year mortgage, it is what it is. It doesn't go up every year or anything. So let's say you get a 30-year mortgage and it's like $1,800, which seems like a fair amount of money. Well, guess what? 30 years from now, $1,800 is not that much. I mean, I remember growing up, my parents' mortgage was like $133 a month, which is like trivial. So some of these times, if you're a renter, rents tend to go up. Rents tend to inflate just like anything else. So there's advantages to real estate, and that way it does provide a hedge. Bubbles, we've talked a little bit here about Alaska. Again, I would be a little scared right now to jump into a major move in Alaskan real estate, just because, I think, I don't know, maybe by next spring or something, we're going to probably see a bit of a shakeout. There's a lot of people, from the slope and from other places that are really beginning to cut back, and the state at some point is going to have to probably lay off a few folks as well. So anyway, there may be a bubble, but hopefully it won't be as severe as the one back in the 80s. Yeah, Tampa, Detroit, San Diego. Again, these people, they're not complaining right now, though, because the values are going way up. So, people that are only in the news when they're losing money, it's kind of artificial. And, by the way, when people, lose 5% or 20% or something in real estate, I mean, it's a crisis. In the stock market, that happens all the time. That's just called a correction. So people tend to be, moves in the real estate market tend to be, a lot more newsworthy than some of the volatility in the stock market. So the second home or as a rental property. So you can't have it both ways. If you're going to write off your second home, you can't have it as a rental. That will not work. There's limitations on that. Rent more than 14 days. No, or do not rent more than 14 days. You can write it off. And So they're talking about, say, like having a cabin or something like that. Commercial property, land and buildings that produce. So the way they're defining commercial property is they're saying, small rentals, say renting an apartment or house as a rental as well. Most people, when they talk about commercial property, they're talking about that used for stores and businesses and stuff like that. So, but anyway, it's just a way of defining it. I would think the better classification would just be investment property. That's property you're specifically living in at that time. Will the income be greater than the expenses, tax deductions, depreciation, income you receive? So, a lot of times, if you're investing, in terms of having positive cash flow, maybe a little bit of cash flow is nice, or a neutral cash flow, but if you're making money kind of over the top on this property, you should probably be reinvesting it, or maybe you should be paying off the mortgage a little bit quicker. I'd rather generate equity in the property that is paying off the property than generate a new income stream that's going to make me, pay it all the way in taxes. So there's also this notion of passive and active losses. If you're involved in any kind of transaction, it doesn't have to be just real estate, but if you've got, for some reason, a passive involvement, which is usually to minimize your liability, you can be passively involved and not be responsible for losses greater than your investment, or you can be actively involved and be on the hook for basically unlimited liability. So anyway, it's legal terms, and I'm not going to necessarily, speak to that. I mean, you would use a lawyer when you're setting this thing up, but if you find yourself, you're being told that you're in a passive, this is a passive investment for you, you don't want to cross that line. You don't want to do something that's going to jeopardize that status. Because if the IRS looks at it, they're going to say, wait a minute, you are actively involved. You are actually out there, doing stuff with the tenants and the rest of that, and you could be liable for greater losses. Undeveloped land. So again, typically more of a speculative buy. Enormous risk, sure, but compared to the stock market, probably about the same. Now, if you're going to, the subdividing the land, you can get yourself in a bit of trouble here if you don't know what you're doing. The subdividing fees, I was looking at buying a piece of property, and they were going to cut me some breaks because I wasn't trying to subdivide it for development. I was just trying to get hold of a piece of property. But, some of these fees for commercial developers, $35,000 or something like that to the muni means nothing, you know what I mean? And filling and doing all this and surveying and stuff can get incredibly expensive, or it can be relatively inexpensive. But you see a lot of properties, some of the large parcels, like say down on the Kenai or whatever, that people will say eligible for subdividing. But what you want to check into is just what those expenses are going to be. And then also keep in mind when you subdivide, when you put in the roads and you put in the turnarounds and all that kind of stuff, that's all coming out of the property that now you can't sell. I mean, if I'm buying 2 acres from you, I'm not necessarily, you may have a 20-acre parcel, but when you subdivide it out and you subtract out all the roads, you may have 15 acres for actual sale, and the rest of it is roads and stuff. Obviously, you'll pass that on to the buyers, but anyway, becoming a land developer might be beyond the scope of most people's, investment portfolio. That's actually coming down to business. They use syndicates in a different sort of way here. Syndicate just means a group of people, in this case a temporary association. But you can come together, and again, you will definitely have a lawyer involved in this process, and you can set up a corporation, trust, limited partnership. But again, that concept of that limited liability for members, that implies that there's some sort of passive status. So I've been involved in a few of these kind of development things, and the biggest one, thank gosh, I didn't follow through with it because these guys got cleaned out. But they were building a huge development, and they were forming like a syndicate. This was down in Florida. oh, you couldn't go wrong. You can make tons of money, and nothing quite seemed right. And that's just about when the bubble was bursting, and those things went down. I don't know if I really, related to you the story of two doctors. I believe they're from Atlanta, but they invested. They bought the penthouse of this huge development thing. It was like 1.2 million bucks they paid for the top floor, and they sold it at the bottom because they couldn't afford it, and they got $200,000 for it. So, that's pretty much $1 million loss. And oh, by the way, if you're both lawyers and things that are doctors in this case, you are not going to be able to declare bankruptcy. I mean, the court's just going to laugh. They're like, no, you need to work. You need to pay off your debts. So these people were young, and anyway, they took their chances, but they ended up $1 million in debt. So bad things can happen if you get involved in real speculative stuff. So just be aware of that. But again, some of these people who thought they absolutely couldn't lose they were kind of corrected. Limited partnership, general partner, unlimited liability, and then limited partners. So partnerships, just by their nature too. I mean, trying to get people to get along, especially when things start getting dicey. I was involved in some real estate things, but it was with one of my best friends. So we got through it. And, we lost a little bit of money on things, but we didn't have, we were close friends. It wasn't like 4 or 5 guys who barely know each other get together on some scheme, and they've got different objectives. So, but that if you're the limited partner, and the general partner's screwing up, you can't necessarily get involved. Due to the legal structure, you're in a passive role. You can't take an active. Anyway, so just be careful when you start getting into some of these more complex situations. And for me, that's not something I would do. There's other ways to invest in real estate. If you want to invest in real estate, even in mutual funds, you can do that. You can find commercial properties that are tucked under mutual funds and do that if that's what you want to do. And that obviously is going to be limited liability because you're just buying the shares. All you can do is lose your shares. You lose the value of those stocks. So that seems a little bit more realistic to me. But anyway, some of these get-rich-quick schemes can be, get poor in a hurry schemes as well. So real estate investment trust, one way of doing it as well. Similar to a mutual fund or investment company. So these things are, I've seen them labeled as a REIT like that, or just a mutual fund that invests in real estate. So however you want to do it, but can happen. You can also get mutual funds that were invested in some of those securities and stuff, mortgage-backed securities. Not a big fan of that because again, you don't have the time or the resources to track down all these mortgages. You're just taking somebody's word that, oh no, these are all good buyers. They've all been approved, but we found that doesn't count for much. Participation certificates. So first and second mortgages. You can take, let's say you own a home and it's nearly paid off. You can, now that you've got equity in that home, you can take a second mortgage on it. Do I want to invest in second mortgages? People are basically taking loans against their houses. You have a lot of collateral. You can go back against that house, but again, do I want to be in the house foreclosing business? And especially, sometimes when you get involved in the whole social justice thing and trying to take somebody's house, and it can be a problem. So some of those, properties, like say in Detroit and some of these other places are, you own a house, but what's it worth? Pretty much nothing. So, equity investment in pool mortgages that have been purchased by one or several government agencies. So again, to say it's risk-proof in any investment is always a stretch. Hedge against inflation, easy interest and limited partner, such as investing $5,000 to own part of an apartment or building. Anyway, any time where somebody, hey, I'm going to make you part of this deal, here, just buy into a certain chunk of it. I don't know. I'm always skeptical why they're being as friendly as they are. If it's such a good deal, why are they making it available to me? I mean, if they're an established company that maybe has a track record of of doing these types of deals, but most of the time, if I want to do this, own part of an apartment building, I think I'd rather go buy my own condo and call it done. So it's whatever exposure you want. Maybe in something like this, that whole notion of having to deal with individual tenants, having to deal with broken toilets. Okay, you don't want to do that, or you're going to be in a different state, different town, whatever. But I'm not a big fan of this type of arrangement. So limited financial liability, limited partners, no management concerns. So they're getting kind of to the heart of what I was talking about, dealing with leases and tenants and things like that. But I don't know. It depends. You buy something in a bad neighborhood with, people that are kind of scraping by, you might have some issues. Especially here in Alaska. Military tenants are probably pretty good. Military tenants overseas, because the people who rent my house in Germany are, they're anyway, it's an upper scale home. So somebody's got to rent to the, people that are living paycheck to paycheck. But then, if I've got a choice, I'm going to rent a little higher caliber property to better folks. So, is it as profitable as having being a slumlord? Maybe not, but certainly the headaches are not there. Leverage, so use of borrowed funds for investment purposes allows you to acquire more expensive property than you could buy on your own. So that is a huge advantage with real estate. That when you're buying into the stock market and somebody says, okay, we're going to use leverage here. We're going to buy, whatever number of shares in this company, but we're going to use borrowed money to do it. That's all kinds of red flags. In fact, you have to be approved for that type of investing, and it's just, because there's things could not only go wrong, but they can go exponentially wrong, because the fact that you're controlling a small amount of stock or a large amount of stock with a small amount of money. Now, in real estate, it's very common to use borrowed money to get started and move on. So it's not nearly as risky. But the financial leverage also kind of compensates for the lower yields. Real estate, again, in a normal market, and the markets you probably want to be involved in are not going up by 20% a year. If they are, they'll probably go down by 20% a year at some point too. So if you want that kind of volatility, but that's not investing, that's speculating. But if you get into a normal situation where, say, house prices are going up a couple, 3% a year, that's not a very exciting return. But if you're controlling, again, $300,000 for the property, but $30,000 for the cash, the actual return on the $30,000 that you have invested is huge. But again, that money is borrowed, so you're paying an interest on that. So there's some more moving parts there, but leveraging in real estate is quite common.
So that'd be 10%. Yeah.
If you were able to get 10% down, which is tough to do, but not tough to do if you're kind of embracing the scenario that I've talked about in terms of, you're going to be, maybe not you, but say somebody's going to be a first-time home buyer. You go out and you find a reasonable home in a reasonable neighborhood, not necessarily your dream home, but you live in that home for a couple, 3 years. You get the good loan, because you're owner-occupied. You get all the perks. You set it up, and then you move on to your next home, and you make that home a rental. So since you were owner-occupier, you probably could have got in for 10% down. So it becomes part of your portfolio. But when you move away from that home, they don't force you to refinance, even though you could never get that type of loan again as a for investment property. If you go to a bank and say I'm looking at buying a home to use as an investment property, the interest rate's going to be higher, and the requirement for money down is going to be quite a bit higher.
Right. Can you touch on FHA loans as opposed to ARP loans? Those are two pretty popular.
Yeah,
loans.
We'll look at it let me push through these ones, and we'll come back and take a look at it, because it can get kind of complex. I mean, was fortunate enough, and some of you may also be veterans. If you can do the VA Veterans Administration is you know, kind of the go-to one if you're if you're a veteran, because then you get it for 0 down, and you get a better rate. But yeah, we'll look at FHA as well. There's FHA, conventional, and different types of loans. Advantages, disadvantage of real estate. So illiquidity. Again, nothing's moving fast, you know, and stocks and stuff, you can get in and out, and you know the cash is settled in your account within 3 days maximum, but you're selling right then. Declining property values, that could happen, but again, you know, depends on the market. Lack of diversification. Well, if you've got all your eggs in real estate, if that's you got this, you know, you're completely, you know, you're land rich but cash poor. Yeah, maybe you've got a problem there. Lack of a tax, yeah, for real estate syndicates, it's not going to be the same as you know, if you're buying a home and living in yourself. Long depreciation period, management problems, direct real estate. So fixing toilets, things like that. So, you know, there's drawbacks. Now we're talking about precious metals, gold collections, things like that. So hedge against inflation, which can be, but again, you know, we looked at the gold chart last week. Safe haven during political or economic upheaval. Again, I'm just not seeing the you know, gold prices should be zooming right now. Things are pretty unstable, and they're not. And one thing about it too is you need a storage place if you're actually going to take the physical gold, physical silver. I actually bought some silver one time. They mailed it to me like in this box, and it was like one of the bars was literally sticking out the side of the box. I was just kind of, it was the strangest thing, and they didn't want to highlight it. You know, the silver company was like JM Bullion or somebody. That I didn't even have to sign for it. I mean, they trust in the mail, and they don't want to do the signature thing at either end, figuring that these would key in on that. But you know, I get a thing from the post office saying I got a box. I go down there and pick it up, and here's this. Oh, go figure what this is. It's really heavy, and by the way, there's a bar sticking outside. I've done better. You know, they take better care of chickens when you get live chickens mailed to you or eggs. There, they call you up. You know, I'm like, that's how I wanted that silver to be treated. It wasn't even. You know, they had it waiting for me when I got there. The silver was just thrown in there with the mail. Curious, but that's how they do business. Risky due to price variations. Lower interest rates often result in higher gold prices. That has not happened. So a lot of these rules are kind of being broken. But you can buy gold in a number of ways. You could actually get certificates and stocks, but most people who are into gold are into, you know, the physical type of gold. And but gold, you know, is pricey. So having a bar of gold is probably more than what most people would do. Plus, it's heavy, real heavy. So I mean, if you get enough that you notice it's heavy, then you know, good on you because you're doing pretty well. But when it's a coin, it's not a big deal. But it's, you know, I don't know. I want to say it's like approaching lead in terms of weight. Silver, platinum, rhodium. So, you know, again, these times they do have automobile uses or some, you know, industrial uses, which will move them around a bit. But silver prices have fluctuated 24 and a quarter an ounce and 32 to over 50 an ounce. And now it's, you know, well, they're saying 1849. It was, I think I paid 21 for some of it, but now it's record low. So we'll look again at some of those charts, but it's difficult. But they typically, most of the precious metals kind of go the same direction at the same time, at least what I've found, between gold and silver and some of these other ones. Platinum is pretty pricey as well. Precious stones. My problem with precious stones is, man, I've seen more fake stones out there. And I'm not an expert. I wouldn't pretend to be an expert, and I'm not always that trusting. So I know, like in Afghanistan, Middle East, Saudi, there were more fake stones than there were real stones. So you know, to trade in these, you're going to have to, whatever. If I lived in, I guess Antwerp in Belgium is a big place for diamonds and all that. But there's also just problem with diamonds, especially is De Beers. You know, one conglomerate kind of controls the whole market, so you're at the whim of those folks too. It's again, I'm not a big fan. Anybody got any precious? No, nobody's going to talk about it, are they? Yeah.
I know interesting fact about De Beers, they set diamond prices artificially high by controlling every known diamond mine.
Yeah.
Right, which is there's warrants out for their arrest in a lot of countries because of that, because they're monopolists.
Yeah.
And they're pretty ruthless. Well, as soon as somebody finds a diamond mine that they don't control, that De Beers does not control, the price of diamond is going to plummet, because diamonds actually aren't more rare than these other stones. The reason diamonds are more expensive than most other stones is because of De Beers.
Yeah.
Because of their policies. Because they make them more rare. De Beers has warehouses full of diamonds that they pulled out of the ground and they won't put on the market because they're very. So watch for that. As soon as somebody finds another diamond mine somewhere, which is, when that happens, it's just randomly going to happen. It's going through the floor.
Well, and then you get these intangibles. Like a couple of years ago, they were talking about blood diamonds, and all of a sudden diamonds are out of fashion. There's, diamonds are, it's like anything. Anything is only worth what people are willing to pay for. I was in the Middle East, Afghanistan, these guys were like, oh, carpets are a great deal, I took one. I took one from Turkey. It was just a breeze, and I think it was worth about $300. So a friend of mine, Muhammad, this dude, he's like, yeah, just take it, because I was going back to New Jersey for a weekend. I don't know why, but I had to go back there for some conference or something. So I took it back there, and they were selling them for like $1,100 for the same one that was $300. I said, well, I've got one here. He goes, yeah, I can probably give you about $300 for it. It's like, exactly. Because, he's buying it wholesale. The wholesale price was about $300. And, nobody's going to pay me $1,100.
You put it on Craigslist for $6.
Well, exactly. If I put it on Craigslist, yeah, everybody's going to want, or they're going to eBay it or whatever. But so you talk about illiquidity, trying to, anyway, it sounds more like a hobby. It's like, collecting cars and other stuff like that. I don't know that I'd want to tie up. And again, cars, you can do all right there as well. But the markets will fluctuate. I've had, Corvettes and Vipers and stuff like that. Man, the value on those will just, as soon as the stock market takes a hit, airplanes the same way. People will, they're a luxury item. And so, anyway, we're talking about it here, but it's again in the investment category. Unless you really know what you're doing, I would steer clear. Other collectibles, again, in my mind, things are worth what somebody will pay for them. So you can't say, oh, this is worth $1 million unless you got somebody standing there with a checkbook ready to buy it. Who knows what it's worth? Not to say. I guess art is going through the roof right now. Huge, millions, billions of dollars being made in art right now. There's a huge surge in prices, but and to do it as a hobby or to do it as investment is probably kind of a stretch. Collectibles on the net, yeah, but again, eBay. Yeah, don't be fooled. Those folks are. I had some issues one time and kind of got to the bottom of eBay, and they basically sent me an email saying, we don't stand behind anything. We're just like a classified ad is in a newspaper. If you have a problem with somebody selling you something, you don't go back to the newspaper. You don't have any recourse against them. And they're the same way. I basically paid for something, and the person just never sent it. And it was clearly a scam, but there's not a bit of buyer protection in there, not one bit. Because there's, it goes on beyond 30 days and this or that, and we'll try and recover. Finally, they just sent me an email saying, yeah, we're not at all responsible. I don't know why you thought we were. So that's not the impression you get when you look at their site. Disadvantages of purchasing collectibles, yeah. Getting your cash or credit card, it's going to be done for in PayPal, so that's not a problem. If anybody ever asks to wire money back and forth on one of these type of transactions or Craigslist, there's nearly 100% certainty you're getting ripped off. But PayPal and things like that, you don't generally give anybody a credit card or cash for an online transaction. So anyway, we're going to go back and look at a couple things now. Let's hope that this thing is loaded up. This is where we left it about 20 minutes ago, trying to see. So what I was trying to show you, and we'll have better luck now, was just some of the information that you can get via some of the screenshots on, say, like an iPhone. We'll give it one try here. Really? I've never tried that.
Class were saying you can jump in over cactus and stuff if you enter some buttons in. When it says the dinosaur shows up, it says internet unavailable.
Yeah, it's like a, what do they call it, an Easter egg?
How do you get that to work?
It's like, okay, this is just not cooperating. I really wanted to show you this.
We accidentally wrote the system on Monday when the seniors putting in other classes that just put minutes.
All right.
You want to my phone?
Will it do that? Let's try this.
You've never done that before?
No, I never have.
What kind of phone you got?
Verizon.
Brand? Is it
Oh,
is it-
iPhone 6.
Yeah, you can, it's just a personal.
So, it should be 13 for my house if you take it down.
You're gonna have to give him your go to.
Yeah, we'll see if it comes. You better. I got an MFP test.
It's, should be iPhone proper.
Anybody else seen it? iPhone.
Type that long digit number in
There you go, Beth.
Oh, okay.
You should probably name your iPhone.
Oh, right.
It just says iPhone, then there's Has anybody ever tried to print something here, like accidentally not done what you're supposed to, but like try to join a Wi-Fi printer?
No.
45 printers, I think I was in the library, 45 printers fucked up. Some of them had some creative things. I don't know, but I guess all the offices are not good.
When I was working for
What do you
Fred
think?
Myers,
Connect it.
It's connected.
Let's see what happens.
our managers, all our phones were named after Frozen characters.
Yeah.
So all the parcels were named after the snowman guy, the Frozen.
Olaf?
Yeah.
Then I found that there was a toy, I was looking for little Christmas gifts. There was this toy, and it was like a Play-Doh. You can create Olaf out of Play-Doh, and then I don't know what chemical it is, but he melts. So you make him, and then there's like a face form and everything, and he just melts before your eyes. And I should have bought that. I didn't trust it, so I don't know if it's good it works. That's a good gimmick.
Connected to iPhone. I'm just not buying it, man.
It's not working.
Well, maybe I'm a bit impatient. Let's just try this one now. Okay, just keep saying loading.
Is Google your homepage?
I think I do have Google as my homepage.
You might want to change that because somewhere along the line, someone told me that that's why my computer was not going so fast, and I changed my homepage to, but it started working a lot better. Because Google and Chrome don't. If you have Google as your Chrome as your homepage, and you have Chrome as your search engine, then it tries to take over a lot of stuff in your computer and it slows things down.
Anyway, so we were talking about HARP and FHE. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do it justice in the time allowed, and I don't want to get off on a tangent where they're trying to sell us something. But, yeah, this is the FAA HARP. Yeah. So in order to qualify for it, it's basically renegotiating the terms of the loan, right? You have to be up to date on the loan. Obviously, you can't be in default on it, and then you can make the eligibility. So I'll do a little bit more research and look at the things, but it's obviously got to be a Freddie Mae or Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac after 2009 or before 2009. Owner occupied. First mortgage does not exceed 125 of the.
So it's a strictly refinancing.
Yeah. What that's going to do is, I mean, you can't be too far underwater. 125%. First mortgage does not exceed 125%. So, what that would mean is, well, simple terms. If you've got 125,000 on the home needs to be at least worth 100,000.
And it sounds like it's also for people who are owed more than 1,000.
Well, yeah, it's people that are, may have other issues in terms of troubles. So we're just going to download this real quick. We'll at least get through this today. Well, I probably want to extract all, right? Okay, so what we're looking at here is, this is just a screenshot of an iPhone. That one that I've got highlighted there is Manhattan Associates. It's a stock that I actually sold this morning. So right now you can look at it, and what can discern from that is the share price now is $72.53, and it's down 26 cents for the day. The reason I know it's down, what that is because I look at that column quite a bit. Also looking up at the top, that Dow Jones, DOW-J, that's the Dow Jones Industrial. So I can get a feeling that the overall market is down just slightly. The other stocks you see in there, Portfolio Associates, Buffalo Wild Wings, Twitter, and Booz Allen Hamilton. But also, since I focused on that Manhattan Associates, it also puts a couple news stories down there at the bottom. I can, use my phone basically to scroll back and forth. So if I was like I was this morning, where I'm getting ready to sell something, I will look at the price, and this price, I know it's a little bit volatile. So I actually sold earlier this morning when it was in the positive territory. It was up about 50 cents for the day. So this one I pulled just prior to class, and it's down 26 cents a day. So that is the kind of the beauty of trading individual stocks, is that you trade instantaneously, more or less, whereas mutual funds trade for net asset value at the end of the day. But anyway, so I go down there and I look at some of the news stories that may be driving a big price swing, and I can look at the news stories for any of those stocks that I have in there. This is just per the way it's mechanized in with an iPhone. The other thing I can do is I can tap that same Manhattan again, and this time it tells me in raw numbers, what the value is going on with that company. So, it's telling me whatever 5.29, and that's in billions there. Next thing I can do is, in terms of a percentage, it's probably a bit more useful. Unless you're tracking the stock individually, I can see that, for example, up there, the Dow being off 12 points only equates to, 7/100ths of a percent. So that's not a big move. You can see some of these other stocks, though, are kind of jumping around. Twitter's up a 1.5%, and that Portfolio Associates, these guys are kind of vultures, but I've made some pretty good money with them. But they rolled in on a lot of distressed properties, and they've been quite profitable over the years. But I wasn't interested in selling them today. Other things, if using those dots down at the bottom, again, when I'm talking about the dots, I'm talking about down here in this area, down along the bottom, I can look at the open and close. So you can see that this one is fairly volatile. That's a spread of just short of $2. So, it opened at 72.68. The high was there. The low was 72.42. So the volume is very important. Sometimes you'll see some swings, and you'll think, oh man, that stock is going places or not going places. But if you look at the volume, and the volume's very shallow, that will be indicative of maybe right during the holidays or near the holidays when there's not much activity. So it may not really be indicative that the stock's moving that far. The market capitalization. So again, that's not a up-down type thing. That is the capitalization of that particular company. And then you can see that this is probably a pretty good one. Now, am I getting out at the very top? Not exactly, but close enough. You know what I mean? The 52-week low was 36.75, and 52-week high is 76. So the stock has doubled. So that's why I sold a little bit today, because you want to lock in a little bit of winnings. I think I initially went in with about $3,000 on this, and it went up to maybe $7,000. I sold like $3,000, and here it is up again. So I sold another just like $1,200 today, just to solidify some wins there. So anyway, you can look at the volume versus the average volume. That'll tell you a little bit of information how normally it is. But I find the graphs are what I'm looking at. So when we saw that 52-week high and the 52-week low. Granted, this is only a 3-month span here, but you can look at different time frames. So there's 3 months. Here's just throughout the day, and that's why I said I sold in the morning. I mean, I didn't know necessarily that it was going to drop like that, but yeah, better lucky than good any day. So I didn't do I just did a simple market order, sell now, as opposed to sell when it gets to, 52 something or other. or not 72 something or other. I thought, man, this looks pretty good. The market's been up, a couple 3-day run here. It seems to be kind of teetering today, because it was up big on Tuesday, Wednesday as well. And then today it's kind of neutral. So I don't know. If you watch the market, you'll just kind of see those things. So it seemed like a good day to go over the side. And here we're looking at this is out 2 years. So again, like I say, I think I probably got into it back here about a year ago. So for that first year, it kind of didn't do anything. And then all of a sudden it started taking off. And it's hard to guess the peak. Your odds of finding that, but you can kind of look at that chart and go, this kind of worked. So any question on because they talk about in the book about how to read the stock quotes in a newspaper. Generally by the time the newspaper is published, it's old stuff. Most people that are trading will do this. Now you can see down at the bottom of the little icon, it's got Yahoo. So there's nothing wrong with using Yahoo for quotes like this. I would not go to them for investment advice. And even those news stories, the selections of news stories may not be completely accurate, but this will at least allow you a quick way to, get an understanding of what's going on. And I wouldn't say I would necessarily recommend any of these stocks right now because, they are what they are. And when I say don't do penny stocks, you can see that one that's trading for 0.0 for 9 cents. I paid considerably more for that than 9 cents, and whatever. It became a long-term hold type stock. Let me see, anything else? And again, right back to the start, yeah, so. But if there are in the news, it is kind of nice to figure out what's going on with, when a company that you've got a position is in the news for some reason or another, it will change things. 11/11, so that's almost a week ago. That wasn't really changing things right now. And investor business, that's all the way back to about 20-some days ago. So, but it's good to know. Good to be able to see. All right. So any questions on projects and stuff? I owe you some more information on the different financing options, because I'll have to put it together on a spreadsheet just to show you what's available. For me, and for anybody who's got a VA available, that's kind of a no-brainer. But your typical options with loans are, VA and then some sort of FHA product, another government-sponsored product, or what they just call conventional, just a regular loan like you'd get from a bank. But there's typically advantages with each, and there's limits also. You can't buy a $1 million piece of property with a government loan. There are strict limits on what FHA will loan. They're essentially a subsidized type thing. VA is the same way, and you can't typically use those for investment properties. But we'll go through the rules on that a little bit next week. Questions? Yeah. Sorry about the delays. I'll try and get that internet part sorted out, but it's cool. I never used the phone like that.
Those they're somewhat unreliable. The tethering to your iPhone like that.